What's up, y'all? Toya here, and I am back with another video for y'all. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys either like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Alright, y'all. There is a question that kind of floats around a little bit from time to time, and that's the question of if you should use your personal vehicle to do gig work, or should you buy a new vehicle, or just rent. This is something that you see with a lot of new people when they don't know how to approach gig work. And even for those vets, maybe you've been doing gig work for so long that you might want to try something different. Maybe you're like, maybe I'll just go ahead and buy something just to, take a little bit of stress off my personal vehicle, whatever it may be. So today I'm going to go ahead and try to help you guys out in deciding whether or not you should just use your personal vehicle, buy a new vehicle, or rent a vehicle to do gig work. So starting with your everyday personal vehicle, let's start with the pros. The biggest benefit is the fact that there is no upfront cost whatsoever. Whether you own your car outright and you don't have a car note, or if you're still making payments on it, this is your vehicle. You can do with it as you please. It's going to be the most convenient because you can bounce between work and personal as needed. Say, for instance, you're out and about running some errands, getting groceries or something, and you see some orders starting to pop up and you're like, you know what? Yeah, it's time that I go ahead and take some of these orders. So you have the ability to just go as you please. Nothing is holding you back. It's your vehicle. You can do whatever you want to. And plus, since this is your own vehicle, you know everything about it. You know when the last time you got the brakes changed, your tires changed, your oil changed, all of that typical maintenance that you have to handle. You know your vehicle. Just like how some people looking at their gas tank and it's like, oh, it's on E. I know my car. I know I can go ahead and make it about 10 more miles so I can go ahead and get down to that gas station. Same thing. It's your vehicle. You know everything about it. But one of the major downsides is the wear and tear. Depending on how much gig work you're doing, you're going to be adding miles on top of miles on top of miles on that car. More miles means you're going to have to do maintenance and repairs more frequently than you would have if you weren't doing gig work. And don't forget that if you do decide to trade this car in or just sell it outright, this is going to bring the value of that vehicle down. You might have added an extra 50,000 miles on that vehicle and you didn't even realize it. And worst of all, if something happens to this vehicle and it breaks down, you can't work and you can't use it for personal use. If you needed the vehicle to get you to and from work, your W-2, you can't do that anymore. Or maybe you just had some errands to run, whatever it may be, doctor's appointments, grocery store, whatever. You can't do that. So until you go and get your car back up and running, you kind of SOL. So with using your everyday vehicle, it's cheap up front. Like I said, no upfront cost. But long term, it can end up being a bit pricey. So what about just buying a new vehicle for gig work specifically? Well, one main pro of that is that you're keeping all of those miles off of your personal car. So that car is going to continue to last. This is going to give you the opportunity to buy the perfect vehicle for gig work. So you can find something that's fuel efficient, super reliable, cheap to maintain. Your options are going to be limitless. I've actually seen a lot of people consider getting electric because that's going to eliminate a lot of the maintenance that you would normally have with a gas vehicle. And that's going to save you quite a bit of money in the long run. But even if you don't go electric, you can get a brand that's super reliable. Some people say Toyotas and Hondas, they're really good. And plus, it's going to be super easy for your tax write-offs. With your personal vehicle, you had to separate your personal from the business. But with this, since you're using this vehicle specifically for gig work purposes, everything that goes into this vehicle can be written off. All the gas you put in, the maintenance you're doing, all the miles, everything. So it's pretty much just a walking tax write-off. Now, on the downside, the upfront cost is going to be a lot more. If you're getting something cheap and used, you might be spending $5,000, $10,000 or more just flat out to buy the vehicle. And then if you're going to be financing, depending on if you're putting something down or not, those monthly costs, they might equal to the same amount that you're paying for your personal vehicle if you have a car note with that vehicle. And plus, you got to pay insurance on that second vehicle as well. So those costs are starting to add up. And then if you are buying a used vehicle, you have no idea how that vehicle was maintained before. You don't know if they were up to date on their tires, their brakes, whatever it may be that's going on internally. By the time you get the vehicle, they might say, oh yeah, I did this, I did that, everything's good, whatever, right? But then 2 weeks later, something breaking down. Depending on who you're buying it from, it may not be as reliable as they made it seem. So that's another cost up front. But I would say that this is probably going to be the better option if you're planning on doing gig work more long term. And last but not least, renting a vehicle for gig work. The biggest advantage to renting a vehicle is the flexibility. You don't have any commitment to any vehicle. You can swap vehicles whenever you like. And this gives you a great opportunity to try out different types of vehicles. Maybe you are in the market for a vehicle, whether it's personal or for gig work, and this gives you the chance to try out different models, see what you like best, see what works better with this app. Okay, this car carries this much for this app and this and that. So you can go ahead and, weigh out your options, right? You don't have to worry about maintenance or repairs. Just don't crash the vehicle, of course. Now, depending on the agreement, you may or may not get charged for the mileage. But if you aren't getting charged, well, you can run that mileage up. So mileage is not going to be a factor. You can drive for however long you want to, how far you want to, as long as you get the car back in good condition. So you pretty much have a peace of mind that you ain't got to worry about nothing but driving. That's it. But the catch is that it is extremely expensive. You might end up paying what you pay for your car note for the month. You might be paying that for the week of renting that vehicle. So imagine if you're spending about $200-300. I don't know how much rental cars usually go for now, but let's just say $200-300, right? So that is coming out of your weekly profits. So if you're making, let's just say $1,000 a week, deduct however much you had to pay for that rental, you're only left with $700. So is it worth it? Kind of just depends on how you're using the vehicle, and of course what apps you're using as well. And like I said earlier, it does depend on the agreement. So depending on what you agree to, you may not have that much flexibility with your mileage. So maybe you can't just go crazy with the miles. And even though the insurance is bundled in that rental agreement, it can also get quite pricey. So as you can see, the main con with this is the price points. So renting is definitely not a long-term solution, but if you want to do it just to kind of test the waters, I would say that's where it's going to fit best. So with all that being said, what will be the best route when it comes to getting a vehicle for gig work? It honestly all depends on your situation. As we mentioned earlier, when using your everyday vehicle, that's going to be best when you're doing gig work casually, part-time, or you just don't want to add on an extra expense with adding on another vehicle. I would say that most gig workers in today's gig economy are pretty casual, so most are going to lean more towards using their everyday vehicle. Now, if you're doing this full-time, this is just what you do all the time, getting a vehicle dedicated to gig work probably would be the better option here. It allows you to get something that is more fuel efficient, so you end up saving money getting a more efficient vehicle than just using whatever you have as your everyday. What if you have a Mercedes for your everyday? You probably don't want to be running that thing down to the ground. So even though it is more pricey up front, and depending on how you go about purchasing the vehicle, you will have monthly charges. Of course, you have to add on insurance to that, but you may or may not have to pay a car note. So technically, more long term, that would be the better financial move if you're going to be doing gig work for an extended period of time. And like I just mentioned with renting, if you just want to test the waters, or just get your feet wet and see how things are, doing a rental, it could probably be more beneficial for you. Yes, it's going to be the most expensive up front, but at the end of it all, you don't have any commitment to anything after that. You didn't add any miles to your car. You didn't add any wear and tear. You know, you just tried it out. You paid your money, and that's it. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to what you have going on, what your goal is, how do you want to approach gig work. You know, there is no right or wrong answer here. For me, I'm using my personal vehicle. You know, it's reliable for me. I haven't really had any major issues. Hell, I'm even trying to learn how to do some maintenance on my car myself. I literally just went and switched out something for my gear shift a couple of months ago. So, you know, I'm learning as I go. But like I said, it's just up to whatever's best for you. But yeah, guys, like I said, that's pretty much it. So I would love to know what you guys think would be the better option for gig workers. Would you prefer to use your personal vehicle? Would you want to buy a vehicle for gig work? Or would you like to rent? Just let me know in the comments. Now, before I go, I have to remind you guys to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss a video. But I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna catch you guys on the next one. And as always, stay safe out there and keep grinding.